So I will tell you a way that you can tell for yourself if somebody you know, or if you think you can tell for yourself if you've attained stream entry. And this is where I'm digressing a little bit and giving you a little bit of a side dish here from the wonderful qualities of Ugga. And this is book of 8 in the Anguttara Nikaya. Ugga was one of the lay Anagamis, a follower of the Buddha, very advanced meditator. I'm just giving you a very brief slice of it because this is how he saw the Buddha. This is how the Dhamma Chakku, the vision of the Dhamma, arose for him. So this is like a testimonial kind of thing. It's like a side note. The moment I first laid eyes upon the awakened one from a distance, understanding immediately came to me, and my mind became clear and confident in him just by seeing him. This is the first unusual and striking thing which one could say about me. Then, Bhante, with a confident mind, I offered him all of my attention, and he delivered a gradual discourse, that is, a talk on generosity, a talk on performing harmless actions, a talk on the blissful spheres of existence, and that includes meditation. He made clear the wretchedness, depravity, and defilement of seeking happiness in sensory indulgence and the advantage of giving it up. When he saw that my mind was ready, malleable, unobstructed, joyful, and bright, he delivered the exalted teaching of the Buddhas, that is, trouble, how it arises, how it ceases, and the path. As a clean cloth rid of dirt would accept dye perfectly, in the same way, sitting there, the stainless, spotless vision of the Dhamma came to me. I realized that which is of a nature to begin, all of it is also of a nature to end. Then Bhante, having seen the Dhamma, attained the Dhamma, experienced the Dhamma, thoroughly plunged and entered the Dhamma, crushed uncertainty, having gotten rid of skepticism, reached perfect confidence in the teacher's teaching. Right then I went to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha as a refuge, and I undertook the 5 trainings in virtue of the righteous life. This is the second unusual and perhaps striking thing which one could say about me. So, and this is Ugga's personal testimony, but this is very typical. It will be pretty much the same formula that is used basically, and more or less the same wording. Sometimes they would add who's reached perfect confidence in the teaching without another's help, basically. At that point, when somebody understands the Dhamma, they understand the Dhamma. They don't need somebody else to say whatever this or that, or say like, oh, what you know is not right. It doesn't change anything. When you know the Dhamma to a certain depth, then whatever people will say doesn't matter. So their understanding is unshakable. So the gradual talk that the Buddha gave to Ugga, this is what I'm giving you tonight. Just so you know. That's the beauty of it. After this whole retreat and this really kind of dive deep into the meditation and really wisdom and all of this, it would be really interesting to explore one of the suttas that the Buddha gave very, very, very often, that explains his whole path, basically. For this kind of sutta to really have the best impact on someone, like a time like this, when the mind is very clear after almost 10 days of meditation, that's really an excellent timing, I think. And this is one of the talks that the Buddha gave to his to a lot of his students or lay people that came to him, like hundreds of them, which arose the vision of the Dhamma in them. So I think it is quite appropriate tonight, and it's called Samangapala Sutta. Basically the fruits of the meditative life, the contemplative life, the life of samanas. His path is so beautiful and clear and bright, and when we just hear it, it just makes so much sense. And it's like remembering, and in fact this is how a lot of sutta ends. It's like people remembering, like, oh, it's like setting up something that was knocked down, setting up straight something that was knocked down. Like remember something that you'd forgotten, like showing the path to someone who was lost. And these suttas actually really often end in that way. And then people go for refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So this whole path is the gift of the Buddha. He's just giving it to us in a glass of light, basically. And we just have to drink it down and practice it and share it without even saying a word. You don't have to even say anything. You just share it with how you are. That's it. Don't need to say anything. And so here we are. Once this was spoken, the king Ajatasattu of Magadha exclaimed, "Excellent, Bhante, excellent," just as if what had fallen over had been set up right, or as what had been hidden was uncovered, or as if the way was shown to someone who was lost, or as if a light was shown in the darkness, thinking, "Let those with vision see." In the same way, Bhante, the Awakened One has brought forth and elucidated the Dhamma in countless ways. Bhante, I go to the Awakened One as a refuge, to the Dhamma and the Bhikkhu Sangha. May the Awakened One count me as a lay follower from now on, who has gone for refuge, for life. And now I kind of abridged this last section because there's a little bit more, but the king Ajatasattu had committed one of the heinous crimes, so he had killed his father, and the weight that this had on his mind was too heavy for him to see the Dhamma in this particular talk. But this is a talk that was given very often, and the Buddha says, you know, if he hadn't done that, he would have seen the Dhamma, because he wouldn't have had that. I mean, imagine just doing that. It's crazy, like how much remorse, how much your mind must feel just to do that. So he couldn't actually see and break through. And he said, but if he hadn't, the vision of the Dhamma would have arisen in him for sure. Because it does pretty much every other suttas that this is talked about. So and this is like to thousands of people at the same time even. So now you've heard it. You've heard the whole of the path, and this is really important. This is our practice. So I really like how this is laid down. We really saw everything that was experienced by Upga, basically. We talked about upliftment. The mind's been uplifted for now 8 days. And it talks about, well, we touched upon a little bit on generosity and then the virtues. And I love that this is not just, it's more elaborated than just like the 5 or the 8 precepts, you know. It's like actually like there's a little bit more information around it and how to practice it. And then there's, you know, he doesn't say like this is the Eightfold Path, but that's what it is. That's how we usually explained it, in this very alive way, basically. Because you can read suttas like the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. At the end, there's like a Vibhanga of the Eightfold Path. Then there's a Vibhanga Sutta also in Samyutta Nikaya. It's really just like bare information of what the Eightfold Path is. But really, the Eightfold Path, that's what it is. That's how we explained it most of the time. And then this is the second sutta, but then the suttas after that is just written like repetition. So we don't get to hear that path a lot, but this is it. This is what he taught. The 12 suttas after that are the same thing. And this is the opening of all of the Sutta Pitaka, basically, just to put you into context. So this is really important. So one of the topics I like to end retreats with is wise friendship. And basically there's this, I found this beautiful little gem when I was in Bodh Gaya. I was looking through my things, and I forgot about this one sutta which says, this is the herald. This is the very first sign of the sun rising, that is the dawn. And he says, and this is the herald, the very first sign of the path of the awakened ones arising, that is wise friendship. And then I see this, and I see so many wise friends. It's wonderful to see within this, here in this Sangha and this community. So what we've been doing here is all about, it all rests into wise friendship. And this is one of the really important aspects of the path, where Ananda came to the Buddha once and said, Bhante, this surely must be at least half of the holy life. Wise friendship, good companions, good friends, wise friends. And the Buddha replied, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. It is the whole of the path. Because it's because of wise friends that we get to encounter the Dhamma, to hear the Dhamma, and to practice it, and slowly get closer and closer to this wonderful liberation. And the Buddha being our first Kalyanamitta, basically. So that, and he said that. So he said, well, if it wasn't because of me, then there wouldn't be this Dhamma practice. And then from there it trickles down through the Sangha, through the ages, 2,000, almost 600 years now. And that's quite amazing. And a topic that is very close to wise friendship is also something that is called the stream of the Dhamma. And this is a topic that is quite interesting also. We're at the end of the retreat, and there's all kinds of talking about entering the stream and all these things nowadays, like sotapatti, basically, sotapanna. And I think they just go really well and hand in hand together, the wise friendship and entering the stream, basically, because that's basically what it means also. If you look at how the Buddha described how the path arises, somebody asked the stream of the Dhamma, the stream of the Dhamma. But what is the stream of the Dhamma? It is just this Eightfold Noble Path. And so there are a lot of theories about what that means, entering the stream. And when we look at the suttas, we find that there are a few ways that we can tell. Like the Buddha at one point, so many people came to him to ask, so is this person a stream enterer, or is this person a stream enterer? And then that person would pass away, and then he was like, that person's passed away, what is this future born, and where did he go, is he a stream enterer? And like thousands of people were coming to him. And then at some point he told Ananda, Ananda, this is kind of tiring me when everybody comes to me and asks if they're stream enterers. So I will tell you a way that you can tell for yourself if somebody you know, or if you think you can tell for yourself. But if you've attained stream entry. And he said 4 things that are now known as the 4 factors of stream entry. He said 1, and it's called the Mirror of the Dhamma, basically. So 1 has unwavering confidence in the Buddha. 1 has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma. Usually when one has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma, they will have unwavering confidence in the Buddha, because he's just naturally the one who taught it. And then 1 has unwavering confidence in the Sangha. Sangha is the Arya Puggala, so anyone that has entered the stream or beyond that. And that means simply those who are understanding and practicing the Dhamma to a certain extent. And so, and then unwavering confidence in the virtues are the virtues of the awakened ones, basically. That is the 5 precepts, basically, to make it short. So this is not poured in concrete. Like, there's not a stage that you get to which, like, boom, you're a stream enterer and we give you a certificate and you're like, hey, congratulations, you became a stream enterer. That's not the way it works. I'm sorry. But rather it is a slow dip. We kind of put our feet in and then check it out. It's like, oh, it feels nice. And then we learn more and we go deeper. And a little bit more, we have some friends around us to teach us how to swim. And slowly we get there. And in fact, there's a few levels before that, to be honest. There is a faith follower, someone who just hears the Dhamma and gains faith and really feels uplifted. That can go away, but at least they're uplifted by the Dhamma and they are starting to have interest. Then there's a Dhamma follower who will take that interest and go beyond a little bit and start studying. And then there's really what we call stream entry, where somebody would pretty much dedicate more of their time and more of their understanding towards goodness, the Dhamma. So that is the trick that the Buddha gave us. Like, that is directly from the Buddha. And it's found in more than one place, maybe in like 3 or 4 places. So that's pretty safe. Usually that's what it means. If you can find the same sutta or same structure in one Nikaya and another, then you're starting to, you can have a lot more confidence in that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things that happens. It's found throughout the suttas. And using the Mirror of Dhamma is not, of course, it's not flawless, it's not perfect. And so that's why I would also add this recommendation, because I talked about it on the retreat, just to like an insurance on the Buddha's mirror. Maybe allow yourself like 10 years and look in the mirror for 10 years, maybe 20. And because maybe now faith is feeling like pretty strong because we've just finished a 10-day retreat, but like all causes and conditions are perfect right now. But that's not when you look for wavering in your confidence. You look for wavering in your confidence when things go bad. If you think, for example, just like this, somebody, a Anagami, who thinks that they don't have any more anger. Well, when everything is fine, anger is not going to arise. And that's why it gets tricky. Because when we think that we're Anagamis, for example, maybe the situation that's going to trigger your anger will not happen for the next 3 years. But maybe in 3 years, something's going to happen and you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's still there. So And it's the same thing for any of those levels of attainment. So it's to be taken with wisdom and discernment, applying your mind to not just gobble up if somebody tells you like, oh, you're this or that, or because I know that, you know, in Burma they hand out certificates. I hear it's happening in Sri Lanka too. Like, hey, you've become a stream enterer and you've become this, or there was this story where this lady who her family wanted her to like take a retreat, and then she was like, yeah, I should go back again. And then that monastery was handing out certificates, and she was good. She went and she did the retreat, and at the end of the retreat, they like give her a certificate. Like, congratulations, you're a stream enterer. And she gets really mad, and then she says, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, last time you gave me anagami. So things like that, you know, that's pretty much what it's worth. So, you know, the instances in the suttas where that comes up, actually it's only the Buddha that said, confirmed these states with people, because he was pretty much the only one who could do that. Then the only other references we have is like people dying on their deathbed and saying to a monk, like a famous monk or something, and then they would go like, Bhante, I do not see any of the 5 lower fetters in my mind anymore. And then the monks would say, good, very good. It's a good gift for you that you see that within you, but they would never tell someone. So these things, you know, it's part of our practice. It's part of the landmarks that we use to see, okay, where am I? You know, how's the anger arising? How's the desire for things arising? Is it really like bursting through the ceiling, or is it, you know, okay, that's pretty moderate. And oh yeah, that situation really used to trigger me big time, and now it's kind of, it's mild, it's still there. And it's going to change, like some situations will trigger you a lot more than others. So these things are really to be approached with your own wisdom, and it's like the rest of the path, you know, when you start with the metta and then you let it go through naturally through each of the Brahma Viharas, and then it goes to still mind. You know, you're not forcing that. Well, it's the same thing with so-called attainments. You just let it go. You just see, and then it will move to there. Like, you don't have to do anything about it. So at some point, the mind will be purified from these things, and then you'll be able to see, yeah, I haven't seen anger in a long time, actually, or impatience. And, you know, at that point, for example, it's not going to be full-fledged anger. So don't look for anger. Look for impatience. See, that's also another point where people miss it. So, you know, it's the same thing when we believe we're something that we're not. That's a really huge hindrance. Like believing they're an anagami, for example. And then there's anger arising, but then they wouldn't see that as anger because they think they're an anagami. So that's problematic. Because then it, yeah, and then like desire arising for the senses, and then not seeing that as an actual thing that says like, hey, you're not that. But believing is just like, well, no, it's not that actually. It's not a hindrance. So see, it gets really problematic when that starts to happen. So I just like to also bring more awareness around that topic. There's of course a lot more to say about that, but I just want to, because I'll be speaking a little bit about, it's a really nice sutta to end with, and it talks a little bit about you know, daily practice, how to be mindful in daily life, and it's just perfect. And it talks about the 4 factors of stream entry, which is something that the Buddha talked a lot about. when he talks about recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and the virtue and the generosity as uplifting recollections which bring up gladness, bring up joy, bring up tranquility, bring up happiness and collectedness. And this is found throughout the suttas in a lot of places. So, to fill you in for the rest of what stream and tree might mean, basically, is that there's also three things that are said to be given up, basically. Sakkaya Ditthi, which is the false belief in self, in a personal me, ego kind of thing. But there's a difference here between mana and Sakkaya Ditthi, which is the theoretical understanding of it, of like you know enough of Dhamma that you know that, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that I am, or just that there is a me, there is a self, there is a doing all these things that is permanent, everlasting, eternal, and all that. And you start to understand a little bit more dependent origination, the six sense bases, and all of that. But mana is really like the complete eradication of like ego or conceit. So these are two very different, levels. It's not that, and this is getting confused nowadays because some people like make a really big deal of stream entry, like saying like you basically shouldn't have like any kind of personality view, where, well, the rest of the fetters seem to contradict that, because you still have anger and you still have desire for sensual desires. I mean, you still get caught up, so obviously it's still there. And actually the Sakadagami will basically calm down these fetters, and they won't be eradicated, they'll still be there. And it's only in Anagami that they completely are gone, sensory desires and ill will or anger. So obviously there's still a kind of a tendency to believe in one's kind of storylines and all these ideas that we have about ourselves, but theoretically we understand, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that, anymore. So you can't really believe in that anymore. So that's what Sakkaya Ditthi means. And that happens. So basically when one understands the Dhamma, one understands a little bit more about Paticca Samuppada, the dependent origination. One starts to understand that, yeah, like this I am, this me, this ego thing is kind of like, it's kind of overrated, and it doesn't really work when you see it properly. So, and that's actually a real relief, like very big relief, just to start to see things in that way, because we start seeing things so personally all the time. And that really helps, even though it's still there, it really helps to see in that way. So next would be Sila Bata Paramasa, clinging to blind rites and rituals. And now this means basically like ritual bathing will wash away your sins. This is exactly what that means. Nowadays it's being kind of misunderstood a little bit. Some people say like taking the refuges and the precepts is like Sila Bata Paramasa, basically. But that's not really accurate. If we do it properly, it's got nothing to do with clinging to rites and rituals. We just train to remember these virtues and to basically make sure that we know what they are and to practice them, basically. But I think that the Buddha, when he said that, from my own limited understanding of all this, is that maybe you've read the Vedas and maybe you've read the hymns, and maybe you've maybe what I'm talking about, the rites and rituals, the Agni Puja, the fire worship, all of that. And I think personally also this is where the Buddha took his analogy of Nibbana, the putting out of the fire, basically. was part of the, the huge emphasis on fire worship, basically. And the Buddha was like, no, put out the fire. So it was, in so many ways, there, and of course he's thinking about a lot of things there, but at the time of the Buddha, it was prevalent, it was rampant with a lot of basically rituals, lots of rituals, even sacrifice and things like that, believing that this will be beneficial for the gods and then beneficial for us, and then but the Buddha said, no, this, when you see the Dhamma, when you see really what the reality is, then all of this, it just falls off, because it's seen as pointless. It's like, why would I do these things when I know right effort, the right course of action, holding the virtues, the law of karma, dependent origination, then none of this is relevant, really. So this falls away. That's another thing that falls away. And this seems kind of interesting, because it's not just in India's history. I was in Teotihuacan in Mexico, on the top of the pyramid there. And actually, don't ask me the story. We're going to be here for a long time. And then I learned that actually it was also traditions there too. They were sacrificing young virgin. It's kind of disgusting actually, but it's really it seems to be some kind of undercurrent that happens in a lot of spiritual kind of worships. And to me, that the Buddha just puts an end to all of that is pretty great, really, to be honest. And then there is doubt, and this is where the 4 factors of stream entry come into play, because vicikicca, doubt, is not doubt you wake up in the morning and you think should I have tea or coffee or maybe sugar or jaggery, or I don't know. That's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here. It's doubt in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the virtue, and that's it. So that doubt, this is where we also find the 4 factors of stream entry, and the doubt is gone. You can have whoever, a Mahatera, has been 100 years in the robes, he comes to you and tells you you don't understand anything about Dhamma. What you know is wrong. It's not going to change anything for you, because you know Dhamma. So what's it going to change? You're still going to go into your meditation, you're still going to experience the same thing. So when does it really become something that you really completely see that theoretically there's no self, and then that you're not clinging to any rites and rituals, and then that you have unwavering confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the virtues? It's hard to tell. But there is also, for every of the Arya Puggalas, the awakened people, there is the path and there is the fruition, the Magga and the Phala. And so this is also a very important difference. And so a lot of people can be on the path and be cultivating the path. And in fact, the Buddha says anybody who's on the path now, when they die or before they die, they will realize the fruit. So if you're able to maintain just the path throughout your life, you will get the fruit at the end of your life. This was said by the Buddha. How does that work? I don't have the algorithm for it. I don't know. Ask Google. Well, in nowhere in this is the Buddha talking about experiencing Nibbana. Just to be clear. There is no clear scheme in the suttas or the Buddha that was elaborating any kind of progressive, exact experience of that was related to an experience of Nirodha Samapatti and an experience of Magga and Phala and a clear sequence. Although I can say that in my researches, I can definitely say that Mahasi Sayadaw in his book, Inside the Manual of Insight, that is one place you can see such a scheme. And it would make sense that a person would like to copy-paste that scheme, basically. Mahasi Sayadaw spoke of his whole path of experiencing all of the insight knowledges, the jhanas, basically, which, by the way, are not found in the suttas. And then one would enter this Sankarupeka jnana, basically. For those of you who've practiced any kind of vipassana, this is when you get so disgusted with the pain in your body that you just shut it off. And you can stay in there for a very long time because you don't feel anything. That's called Sankarupeka jnana, so the equanimity with all formations. And then when you're steady in that state, you get so disgusted that you completely remove yourself from all of that, and there's a kind of a cessation that happens. Although this is not the same cessation that we talk in, so this is a very different experience. It doesn't lead to the same thing, and because, I mean, the whole path to get there is different also. And I'm not gonna, go into great details about this, but just to draw a line where, this is one thing and what we're practicing here is another, and where this venerable Mahasi Sayadaw is taking that from is from a book called the Visuddhimagga. And this is another place where you can see where that scheme happens, where one would enter Nirodha and then experience a Magga, and then another time Pala, and then another time Sakadagami, some kind of elaborate scheme like that. But in reality, when you really know the suttas very well, when you know the actual Buddha Vachana, what the Buddha said, this is nowhere to be found. And we find a really different approach, which is much less clearly defined and much more open for some kinds of interpretations. To a certain level. Of course, there's some factors that need to be fulfilled, but there is some room around that. I just want to say, though, now having kind of brought down the whole curtain, sorry, but this I want to tie back into our practice, and somebody who experiences Nirodha Samapatti in this particular practice, and Nibbana, even if it's like just the kiss that I'm talking about, the Nibbana kiss, which happens like this. Because at the beginning, the mind will only experience it for a very short time. And one has seen all the jhanas with very good, sharp clarity of wisdom and discernment, and the Brahma Viharas, the whole sequence, and is really settled into this, and then experience Nirodha or Nibbana. Now, even though the Buddha doesn't link it to any of the fruits or the paths, I mean, at that point, you have a pretty solid understanding of this whole path. Because now you're not just, and that's the problem nowadays, is that because of certain practices that have arisen over the millennia, like absorption concentration, which have basically made jhana alien to the population, basically. You're going to have to be a monk for 10, 15 years to practice 7 hours a day meditation to actually experience all these jhanas. Then it just rips away one of the most important part of the path, basically. And then one cannot see the whole path, and it becomes inaccessible. And so with the open, aware jhanas that you've been practicing here, that's just to give it a name, because when you say jhana nowadays, it just is interpreted right away as absorption concentration, which is just, it's just unfortunate, but that's just what happens. So we kind of have to give it a name, even though it doesn't need a name. It's just also, I call them the Sutta jhanas or the Buddha's jhanas, compared to, anyways, the Visuddhimagga jhanas, basically. Then it's so special, this teaching here, because the wheel is turning again. the path is whole again. And you can actually see it for yourself and practice it for yourself. And anyone can experience that for themselves. And this path is to be experienced by the wise for themselves. And it's immediately effective. I mean, you don't have to practice 15 years as a monk. It's immediate, like it's not delayed in time, it's not affected by time, it doesn't change. That teaching, of course, if we interpret it in a wrong way, then of course that can be problematic. But when we understand it in the right way, it's applicable here and now by the wise. You can see it. When one understands and practices all the way through all of these open aware jhanas, the sutta jhanas, then one can experience, I called it samma nirodha, samma nibbana, basically, because there's been so many things said about these things now, so we have to come up with these words, unfortunately. And actually, you know, you can tell for yourself. And once you experience that, and in fact, one can experience that and fall off, unfortunately. And so be careful about that. Even if you experience it, it doesn't mean that it's unshakable. Continue practicing it, continue consolidating it. And then at one point, you'll get a good sense. You'll be like, yeah, like, this is not going. This is not going anywhere. Like whatever happens is not going to go. And then you can tell, okay, now I'm pretty confident about it. Like really pretty confident. And things will happen and you'll get even more confirmation and more confirmation. And the more you go there, the more you go get it, the more you... So basically I say it's another kind of mental impression, basically. When people enter Nibbana, Nirodha, more and more, or the longer you stay with the still mind in neither perception and non-perception or bare awareness, this will leave an impression in your mind. And it's basically voidness, the impression of voidness, basically. That's more and more what the mind is going to look like from the inside out. So there will be things happening, but there will be a very calm, unwavering kind of voidness at the back, which supports whatever is happening. And more this will just kind of help you remove anything that's happening which is hard or kind of causing friction or whatever. It's actually easy to dissolve in there. So I just want to summarize this. I kind of rip off the curtain here of the kind of really clear-cut progress through like the Arya Puggalas in some kind of Nirodha, Samapati, attainment kind of scheme. But I also wanted to feed in that someone who experiences this teaching all the way to the end, it's just going to become natural. So I don't think we need a scheme that is really elaborate to know this, but you can definitely know this for yourself. And I don't even have to tell you, you will know. So that's the best about it too. And I'm not even gonna ever tell you or anybody, so I'm just gonna tell you to keep practicing, so that's it. So here, Nandiya, the Buddha's cousin, is asking the Buddha about people who, basically, if people who do not have any of the 4 factors of stream entry, if they live their lives mindlessly or without being aware. And so he says, Bhante, those wise practitioners who are thoroughly and completely devoid of all four qualities of stream entry, are they not living in negligence? And so, completely, utterly devoid of any of those. So that kind of gives us a little bit of like of an insight on like actually there's quite a bit of room here, you know. So Nandiya, those who are thoroughly and completely devoid of all four factors of stream entry, these I call people who stand outside this teaching, in the midst of those who do not even practice. Interesting. So, I guess we have some people here with qualities of stream entry, so it seems, just that you're standing here in the midst of this assembly, listening to the Dhamma with a faithful heart that's been practicing for 10 days. It would seem logical to think that you are standing somewhat within this teaching, at least for 10 days, and that you are practicing. So it seems quite logical to think that you're doing pretty good. But as to how a wise practitioner might live mindlessly or mindfully, listen and apply your mind carefully. I will explain it to you. Yes, Bhante. Here, a wise practitioner is filled with confident understanding about the Buddha. He's recollecting either like the Buddha's qualities, the Dhamma's qualities, the Sangha's qualities, or the virtues. Or else, a wise practitioner is filled with confident understanding about the virtue of the realized ones, which is unbroken, unflawed, spotless, unsullied, liberating, and taught by the wise, appeasing, and which turns into mental collectedness. So, again, I'm not even making that up. The virtue is leading to mental collectedness. That practitioner rests content. Oh, this sounds like problems. With this unflagging understanding, and does not make any further effort to meditate by day, nor for mental solitude at night. Meditation and viveka were basically the same thing in the Buddha's words. Living mindlessly in that way, that means not even though you've attained something great on a particular retreat or a discourse, let's say you hear the Buddha talk at some point and you just like realize something deep, and you have this unwavering confidence in the Buddha, yet you don't practice after. So that is called living mindlessly. It's for the Buddha. Living mindlessly in this way, there is no gladness. When there is no gladness, there is no joy. When there's no joy, there's no tranquility. When there's no tranquility, one lives in displeasure. For one who lives in displeasure, the mind does not become collected and harmonious. With such a scattered mind, the nature of mental states does not grow clear. When the nature of mental states does not grow clear, one can be regarded as dwelling mindlessly. So, here's the definition of mindfulness for you. Now, living mindfully. How does a practitioner live mindfully? Nandiya, a wise practitioner, is filled with confident understanding about the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the virtues of the awakened ones. They are unbroken, unflawed, spotless, unsullied, liberating, taught by the wise, appeasing, and which turn into mental collectedness. That practitioner does not become complacent with this unflagging understanding and diligently meditates by day and is devoted to mental seclusion, viveka, at night. See, a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening. Living mindfully in this way, there is gladness. When there is gladness, there is joy. When there is joy, there is tranquility. When there is tranquility, one lives in happiness. When one lives in happiness, the mind becomes collected and harmonious. With such a collected and composed mind, the nature of mental states grows clear. And when the nature of mental states grow clear, one can be regarded as dwelling mindfully. So again, this is seems to be a really good definition of mindfulness, sati, and also a really tangible way, tangible advice to how to approach the daily life that is just coming tomorrow, out the doors, into the wilderness of the world. So I just thought I would offer this tonight, this beautiful advice from the Buddha to how to, we've all been practicing here on retreat, and everybody here has been doing really good, really amazing progress, and lots of smiles, and lots of really light spirits around, so it's really good to see. And it's actually genuine. Now it's gotten to that point where everybody's has made it to the make it point, not just the fake it until. Everybody's made it, and so that's quite amazing to see. So don't sit on your laurels and keep practicing. And invest in your own happiness. Really, that's what it is. And I can only recommend that, whatever happens for you in your life, just remember to keep banking a few hours for your own happiness every day. And then whatever you're going to do is going to be fine. So that's the general advice. Really, it's not about, do this career or do that career, or you should do this or not do that. Just meditate and then it'll be fine. You're likely to take good decisions, smart decisions, and you'll be happy because you'll have gladness, you'll have joy, you'll have tranquility, you'll have happiness, and you'll have collectedness of mind. And that is just a blissful way to live your life.